Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to watch. So I've got an update for you guys on this massive storm that is moving through the southeastern U.S., and this is going to be continuing to produce and drop tons of rainfall on the eastern United States. And we also do have some severe weather out here in the Central Plains. We've got a pretty big area with some damaging wind gusts and a huge hail core. So some very interesting things could happen today. We also obviously do have Tropical Storm Bret that's nearing the Lesser Antilles Islands. As we get into the later afternoon hours, this storm will actually make landfall on those islands very shortly. But we've got an update for all of this in today's video. Okay, welcome back to another Mr. Storm video. And to start things off, we're gonna look at the radar right here, so you can see that you've got storms moving through the southern mid-Atlantic region, also parts of the southeast area, and so like a lot of Florida. You guys have been dealing with some storms this afternoon, this morning, but pretty much the entire eastern U.S. has been seeing some storminess throughout today, but mainly the entire western U.S. is dry today. So we definitely have seen a major pattern flip, but also just want to say happy summer, guys. We have officially made it to summer. Today is the first day of summer. It's very, very exciting news, but basically what this means is that storm season. We've got many storms that come throughout the rest of the season, and that means we're just gonna have to track a lot more storms and a lot more severe weather events and tropical systems. But it's gonna be a pretty crazy ride out here during summer. But we're definitely in for the ride, and it's gonna be a wild one. But just want to point out that today's the first day of summer, so happy summer to all of you guys, and let's get started with the video. So we're going to begin the video with the alerts. And so, as you can see, that basically what we've got right now is we've got some heat advisories or I don't know, that actually might be a heat watch, heat advisory, and also excessive heat warning for a lot of Florida. A lot of Texas. You can see that mainly the southern region of Texas is under these advisories and these warnings. But I feel like the farther south you go, the hotter it's gonna get. So you've got real feels in the 110s out there. So it is brutally hot out there, sizzling heat for pretty much the entire the southern half of the state of Texas. And then you also do have a pretty big area under a flood watch stretching all the way from southern Virginia down into northern Florida and the Tallahassee area. You guys are under, I think that area, you guys are under a flood warning. So very interesting to see what happens there, but definitely showing off that that a lot of that rainfall is definitely falling, and we see that based on just the alerts that there's a lot of rainfall out there. But you do also have some severe thunderstorm warnings out here. This is a pretty big area. You have quite a few areas in North Carolina and South Carolina. I believe this is both two states that have been included in severe thunderstorm warnings. But Jacksonville, looks like Morehead City, Kingston, and New Bern. I think all of you guys should be under this severe thunderstorm warning. So some pretty intense storms could definitely impact today, and some in which could be severe. We go back to the alerts, and you do have a dense fog advisory up here for parts of the north central. And this is just because there's been a lot of smoke coming down from these wildfires in Canada, and it's been staying in the atmosphere, in the sky, for so long that the air quality has been very, very bad lately. So the National Weather Service has issued a dense fog or air quality alert for this area. So just make sure that you guys limit your time outdoors, and make sure that you're not staying out in the outside when the air quality is so bad for a long period of time. But the rest of the country is pretty quiet, so we shouldn't have too much happening right now. And we're gonna move on to the NAM 3 KMO for the South Central. We're just gonna be breaking down today's storms and kind of what they're gonna be bringing. I know they're definitely gonna be severe, but what are we gonna be seeing with these storms today? So you can see we're starting out around 9 a.m. this morning. So we're already past that. It's about 12:30, 12:50. So right now it's 12:50 Eastern time. But we skip ahead to 1 p.m. today, and you don't really have much happening. You do have a band of storms that's been moving, rolling through southern Nebraska. And now this is going to be the first couple of storms that's really going to start bringing the house down. This is really going to start generating those other storms to fire across the region. But I want you to pay attention very closely to southern Nebraska. Southern Nebraska, you're going to see a very, very intense band of storms. It's going to kind of just look like a glob of reds and purples. And this is really going to tell you guys where the most dangerous severe weather is going to be. And here it is right now. You've got your squall line right here, a very intense squall line, very sharp and precise squall line. Now, this is kind of telling you guys that, if you're looking for the place that's going to get the strongest damaging wind gusts, it's probably, I would put your money right on south central Nebraska. I think you guys could definitely see, the strongest wind gusts and the most wind gusts out of anybody else. But I mean, the timing for this is probably going to be the morning hours of tomorrow. We're getting into 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, and I mean, you've got very, very intense hailstorms and windstorms firing across this area. And then we skip ahead down into Kansas, and you can see even Kansas. You guys are going to get hit by some pretty intense storms. I wouldn't say the hail's going to be too bad, but you definitely will get hit by some storms. 66 degrees. It's actually not going to be too hot. So it's looking like there's a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, considering that we do have pretty high dew points, and we do have pretty low temperatures, considering that we usually see 80s and 90s in this region. But look at these storms firing across Oklahoma. You could almost point out some specific I guess supercells, because you see that these are probably going to be discrete cells, because you have very independent storm cells, looking like that they're going to be pretty strong, but they're very small. So very small and precise storms out there in Oklahoma. But we continue playing this throughout tomorrow, and we get to noon tomorrow, and you still have that line of storms that's squalling, that's moving, that's going to be pushing down now into Kansas. So you guys in northeastern Kansas, you guys got to be ready tomorrow for these storms to impact. And definitely the same for Nebraska. But I mean, this is going to be continuing on for hours and hours, and this is just going to be bringing a ton of severe weather alerts. So you're going to get on and off tomorrow. If you're in the way of this line of storms, you're going to get on and off tomorrow severe thunderstorm warnings pretty much every hour, because this is a pretty big area this is going to be sweeping through. But it looks like the earliest of storms is going to be impacting Kansas and Nebraska. So you guys are going to get the strongest storms first, and we're going to probably have to wait until like the late hours of tomorrow until we start seeing the storms firing across Oklahoma and Texas. But you still get that squall line already. We're getting into 3 p.m. tomorrow. So we're getting into like the early evening hours of tomorrow. That's when those storms start dying down, and that's pretty much when 7 p.m. is probably when you're going to get that break in the storm. So it's going to be a very, very, like small break in the storms, very tight cutoff. But soon, that's when you're going to start seeing these storms across Oklahoma and Texas start ramping up. Look at this supercell right here, just in the central panhandle of Oklahoma. You guys will probably get hit hard by a lot of hail, maybe some tornadoes out there. But I mean, look at this bunch of purple and pink. You see, this is a massive hail core, and when I say hail core, that means a big area in a supercell thunderstorm that drops a ton of hail. And now, when you see like the intense shades of pink and purple, that's when you can kind of point out, how big that hail is going to be and where that hail is going to be. So I really do think that the largest hail and the most hail is probably going to be falling in northern Oklahoma. Now, where do I think that the strongest wind gusts are going to be? Definitely along the northern border of Kansas, along with the southern border of Nebraska. But we continue playing this throughout. I believe this would be Saturday. And you can see that, it does try and form a squall line. It does actually form a squall line for about an hour. So this is like the middle. This is just the very first morning hour of Saturday, and you're already seeing some pretty intense, thunderstorms already across, parts of the even close to like Arkansas, and then maybe even parts of southwestern Missouri. But I mean, this is going to be a pretty large storm, a pretty large area, but it's going to be on and off. So it's a matter of, you just got to figure out what the timing is going to be for each storm, and what, the storm has their own segments, and also how strong the storms are going to be, and then obviously where they're going to be. But we're getting into like the afternoon hours of Saturday, and you see that you don't really have many storms left over. And then by the time you get into the late afternoon hours of Saturday, you can see that pretty much all the storminess is over. So we're gonna look at the SPC outlook for today. This has been updated quite a few times today. I know last night, in last night's update, this was actually for, we already had an enhanced risk out here in this area of the slight risk, but this has been updated 3 times today. One time really early this morning, one time later this morning, and then just now we did have an update. So basically, what we have is a downgrade of storms. So what this means is that you'll probably see a lot less storms out here, or you will. It's the case is probably going to be that you'll see a lot less storms, or that you'll see, like a lot less stronger storms, but you'll still see quite a few amount of storms. But basically, what you see is that you have a really, really big area in this marginal risk, over 40,000 or 40 million people out here. But this is also because of, the secondary marginal risk out here in Florida and then along the eastern coastline. But we're mainly focusing today on the south central U.S. So you see the slight risk, including a lot of major cities like Denver, Colorado, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Aurora, Colorado, and then Cheyenne, Wyoming. But there are quite a few people in the way of this, and I also want to point out Denver, Colorado. So this is showing you that when you see Denver right on the borderline of the slight risk, that shows you that anything farther like west than Denver, or this like line coloring in red, you're pretty much not going to see any severe weather, just because the storm has to travel through and past the Rocky Mountains to get that interaction with the cold air and the warm air to stir up some of those tornadic supercells, and then also create that a large hail core. But you definitely see this point. You definitely can point this out here in around the McCook area of southern Nebraska, and then also parts of southwestern Nebraska. You could see that is where we saw the hail core, and the very strong and dangerous looking squall line. Well, that's what you're seeing on the SBC, because you're seeing this marginal risk and the slight risk. But the tornado threat, it's a little bit higher than what it used to be. You're still at a 5% risk, but it was at one point, I think today, it was down to a 2%. But it's up to a 5% risk today, but a little bit farther south. So maybe you're talking about like a tornado risk a little bit closer to New Mexico and the northern Texas area. But I really don't think that the tornado threat should be too bad today. But there's still a chance for some tornadoes out there across this region. But mainly like tomorrow into Saturday, I think that's where you're going to see the most tornadoes. But we got a little wind threat, and you can see that we're only up to a 15% risk. It's pretty much identical to the slight risk for severe weather, but the wind threat, including Denver, Colorado, Colorado Springs, Aurora, Colorado, and Cheyenne, Wyoming. So if you're in the 15% risk, you're probably going to get hit by at least one storm that will bring at least 45-mile-an-hour wind gusts. But some of you in this 15% risk could get hit by a storm that will bring a little bit stronger wind gusts, like 50 to 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. But it's definitely possible for this entire area. We used to have a hatched risk for this area, but it's actually been taken off of the map. So that tells you that they're losing faith in the idea that we're going to see some widespread damaging wind gusts today, but that definitely does not mean that you should just, go outside and just, say to your neighbors like, oh, the severe threat's over and we won't get any severe weather today. There's definitely still a pretty good chance for severe weather for this entire area today, and we're already seeing some of those severe storms fire across the region. But hail threat, you're still hanging on to that hatch risk, including that 15% risk. So major cities like Denver, Colorado, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Aurora, Colorado, Lakewood, Colorado, and Fort Collins, Colorado. So you know, a lot of the areas just east of the Rocky Mountains are going to be seeing a lot of this hail, and they're pointing this out with the hatch risk. So maybe you're going to say that once you have storms that have passed through the Rocky Mountains, that's when you're finally going to start seeing that hail course. So very interesting to see how this plays out today. We go to the day 2 outlook, and I'm not going to spend too much time looking at this because we're only up to a slight risk, but it's a pretty big area, but there's not too many people, only a little bit over 2 million people in the way of this. But tornado threat, you're only up to 2% risk, so I'm just going to say that we're not going to see any tornadoes tomorrow. Wind threat, up to a 15% risk, kind of like what we're seeing today, except a much bigger area. And then hail threat, you have a huge area in a significant severe, which would be this hatch risk. So we're going to talk about this a lot more tomorrow if I can get an update in tomorrow. But I mean, really, you got to watch out tomorrow for that hail. This entire region is going to be covered in a 15% risk for hail. And I think that if this gets changed, what's going to happen is that if it gets changed, it's going to get upgraded. I think we could definitely see a 30% risk for hail and maybe even a 45% risk for hail, but for areas farther east. So that's pretty much it for your SPC today. And we're just going to be looking at kind of the forecast for the southeast and the northeast, but we're also going to be looking at how much rain could fall throughout today, tomorrow, and then the rest of the week, and then eventually next week, because we do have a stalled front and a stalled low that's going to be producing and dumping so much rainfall that we could see inches of rain fall across this entire region. So we're going to break this all down in this segment of the video. So you can see that this was about an hour ago. This is the Eastern time. You did have some pretty intense storms firing across the the coastal areas of North Carolina. You did see that earlier in the update you saw with that severe thunderstorm warning. Well, that's pretty much for this area right here. And you can see we continue playing this throughout the day. We're getting to 1 p.m., now 2 p.m. You're still seeing those pretty intense storms fire only across northern North Carolina. The rest of you guys should be just out of the clear of the storms, just, getting a lot of that rain and a lot of that drizzle out there. So pretty miserable weather out there. And the rest of you guys are just going to see some low-lying clouds with some fog and some on and off drizzle. But if you go into like the peninsula of Florida and you go to like the Tallahassee area, you guys will get hit by some pretty intense storms that could possibly turn severe. But it's going to be pretty much the same story for everyone else for the rest of the day. But 5 p.m. today is when you could see some storms fire across now Georgia and South Carolina, and these are probably going to be the contenders for the severe storms. I think that it's going to be the late evening hours of tonight is when you're going to start seeing those more like organized severe storms. But we get into like the overnight hours of tonight into the very early morning hours of tomorrow, you're still seeing a lot of that rainfall come down, but it's mainly going to be thunderstorms impacting the peninsula of Florida for tomorrow, and then pretty much all the rest of the rainfall is going to be up north. But if we went out a few more hours, you'd see that there's still going to be more rain left over, as this low pressure center will actually get stuck right between the northeast and the southeast, and then it'll eventually just get bigger and bigger to the point where both the northeast and the southeast are going to be getting rainfall accumulations from the same storm. So we move on to the northeast to see what you guys are going to get from this today. And basically, we're going to start out at around 8 p.m. 8 p.m. tonight, and you can see that what you've got is you got mainly storms off to the south. The only storms that you're going to get today, as I accidentally get away from this, but the only storms you're going to get today, it's looking like you're probably going to see Connecticut and Rhode Island seeing the storms today. The rest of you guys were probably going to be out of the clear. A bare miss from these thunderstorms and these rain showers today. But it's going to be a mainly cloudy and drizzly day for the Northeast and the Southeast. But you guys in Long Island, New Jersey, then also parts of Pennsylvania, you guys are just gonna barely miss these storms. But then tomorrow it's gonna be full on storminess. You can see that a lot more intense and widespread storms will enter the region. But still, it's not gonna be. I don't think it'll be full on storminess. I really do. I don't think that you're gonna see widespread storms until like Saturday and then maybe even Sunday. So interesting. It's very interesting to see when those storms will finally really impact the entire region, instead of just a few specific spots and parts of the Northeast. But we switch to the GFS model for total accumulated precipitation, and we're gonna skip ahead to the next 78 hours, which is a pretty good time to stop. Well, maybe even we'll switch back to the 60 so we can get the full 96 hours, just to see the full duration of the system. And you can see that pretty much everyone's gonna get at least half an inch of rain. I mean, everyone along this entire region that I was talking about is going to get at least half an inch of rain. But I think, the Ohio Valley, you guys, specifically Ohio State and Florida, you guys could get anywhere from 2 to 5 inches of rain. Specifically speaking, Florida, I mean, these area in the dark purple, I mean, this is 4 to 5 inches of rain. That's a lot of rain in just like 96 hours. So, throughout the rest of this week and then into next week, you guys in Florida are going to see a ton of rainfall. And then also you guys in Ohio, you're going to see pretty much similar amounts of rainfall, then maybe even stretching into parts of southern Michigan. So a huge area in the way of the storm, but pretty much everyone's going to get at least an inch of rain. But that's going to bring us to the tropics. So we finished the United States forecast, but now we're gonna have to talk about the tropics. So we all know that we have Tropical Storm Bret very, very close to the Southern Antilles, and this is about to make a direct landfall on these islands out here. But right now, you got maximum sustained winds of 70 miles per hour. You got 999 millibar low pressure. So it's not the greatest of storms considering how organized it is, because 999 millibars isn't too low for a tropical system. But you've got movement west at 14 miles an hour, so this is not moving northwest, southwest. This is just moving dead on west, and it's going to continue like that. But we are very, very close to hurricane status. This is still a tropical storm, but this could definitely, by the time you're watching this video, this could definitely be Hurricane Bret. We're only a few miles an hour away from declaring this storm a hurricane. The requirements for a hurricane is at least 74 mile an hour winds, and right now we have sustained winds of 70 miles an hour. So we still have a few miles an hour to go. But if we get up to like 75 miles an hour or 80 miles an hour, that's when you'll start hearing people start talking about Bret being a hurricane as it makes landfall on Guadalupe and that area. But for the summary, Tropical Storm Bret is nearing the Lesser Antilles, expected to bring strong winds and heavy rain to portions of the islands later today and tonight. So, that's pretty much just telling you that it's going to bring some downpours, tropical downpours out there, some pretty gusty winds. could blow around some unsecured objects. Some trees could come down, so make sure that you're obviously ready for some power outages. But I really do think that the power will definitely come out for some of these islands out here. But I think you guys are pretty well prepared, as the forecast hasn't really changed for the direction of this system. It's just a matter of how strong exactly it's going to get. But we definitely know that this is going to bring some pretty intense tropical impacts. Then we also do have newly formed Tropical Depression 4. So you did notice that we had Invest 93L, the second tropical wave behind Bret, that just formed last night into, or it might have formed this morning into Tropical Depression 4. And this is looking like it's going to be almost the exact same strength as Bret, except it'll take a different direction. So it's going to bring us to Tropical Storm Bret live tracker. It's run a website called Zoom Earth. It's really a good website just to track tropical storms and tropical systems. But once this loads, you can see that um, once we get on here, you can see that most of these islands farther closer to the south, you guys are pretty much under tropical storm warnings and watches. This area in blue, you guys are under tropical storm warnings. So like Martinique and these islands a little bit further north, you guys are going to get hit probably the hardest. But you see the tropical storm warnings are for the islands farther north, just because that the National Hurricane Center declared that the stronger like area of the storm is going to be the northern side of the storm. So if you did have an eye wall, it'd be the northern eye wall. So that's probably going to pass through just north of Martinique, if not the northern half of the island of Martinique. And you guys in Guadeloupe, I think you guys are you guys are still under the tropical storm warning. You guys are going to get hit pretty hard too. But I think the strongest wind gust could definitely be a little bit farther south, as you do have a hurricane watch. Now, you'd be wondering, like, why do you have a hurricane watch for a tropical storm? Well, that's because that you are so close, to having a hurricane, that you're actually the National Hurricane Center actually put out a hurricane watch for this area, just because how close this storm is to a hurricane. And this is not uncommon for tropical storms, to see this. So when you have a high-end tropical storm like Bret, and you have wind gusts that have been gusting frequently to 70 miles an hour, and sometimes even above, I mean, it's pretty likely to have a hurricane watch somewhere close to where those 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts will be. But you can see that the path of it, right now, it's a 70-mile-an-hour storm. It's a tropical storm, and right now the outer bands are impacting Barbados, Guadeloupe, and then parts of Martinique. So you're getting a little bit of rainfall, not any strong winds yet. But Barbados, you guys will probably get hit by those tropical storm force wind gusts probably around 8 p.m. 6, 7, 8 p.m. tonight. That's probably when this storm will make landfall. And then direct landfall on these islands probably around 9 p.m. tonight. You guys will probably be seeing 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts and some pretty intense storm surge out there. But once these wind gusts pass through the islands, they still have carried on 65-mile-an-hour strength. So this is still a high-end tropical storm, even when the storm passes through the islands. So it's only going to lose about 5 miles an hour of wind gust strength. But this continues towards the Caribbean, and you're still up to 60 miles per hour. So maybe this can actually make its way through the wind shear. It's going to take a pretty hard hit through the wind shear, but it will actually possibly get through the Caribbean and it'll actually try and make a secondary landfall on Central America, so like Nicaragua and Honduras. But that area, that general area, like San Salvador and those cities, you guys could definitely get hit if this storm is a little bit more long track. But it really depends on how much wind shear it's going to take and how much the wind shear is going to take off from the system. But we kind of put it right just south. We put it equivalent to southern Dominican Republic. So this is just south of the DM, and you have 50 miles per hour. So this is well above tropical storm force wind gusts. So I mean, this it's very interesting to see how strong these wind gusts will be after they make their way through the islands. But if you still are not sure of the timing of the storm, this storm will definitely pass through the Southern Antilles Islands by 7 p.m. tonight. So, like the late evening hours of tonight into the early overnight hours of tonight, and then obviously throughout the rest of the night is when you're gonna have the storm making its way through the islands. And then by tomorrow morning, you'll probably be done with the storm for most of these islands around Martinique. But then the rest of you guys will probably be out of the clear. And you can see Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I really don't know how to pronounce these names. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not used to working with these islands here because, the islands don't typically get hit by tropical systems too often. But Grenadines, I think, I don't know. I might be pronouncing that right, but if you guys can, please correct me in the comments below. But again, like Barbados, St. Lucia, and Martinique, I think all of you guys are gonna get hit the hardest, and maybe Dominica, you guys could take some pretty intense impacts from the system as well. So that's gonna be pretty much it for Bret, and now we're gonna be moving on to Tropical Depression 4. So this has been a pretty good storm. It's looking pretty healthy out here. This is well off the coast of Africa, but you could definitely see that it's been churning some waters out there, and it's going to take a ride northward. So it's going to take a curve and try to get out of the way of Bret. And so, in a few hours, this is forecasted to become a tropical storm. So, by 8 p.m. tonight, so like by the time you're watching this video, we may have Tropical Storm Cindy, because Cindy is next on the list. Cindy is spelled Cindy, and I think we will definitely have Cindy by tonight. And then once we get through the overnight hours of tonight, it will rapidly strengthen. You're already up to a 45 to 50 mile an hour storm by 8 a.m. Friday. Then we get to like the overnight hours of Friday. You're up to a 50 mile an hour tropical storm. This is pretty much the typical strength of a tropical storm, with those wind gusts being around 50 miles an hour. But this is when it starts taking that curve northward, and it might take a jump for the East Coast. You can see we zoom out here. It looks a lot longer than Bret, but it's going to barely miss Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. And maybe if it does take a turn, you see that this is a cone of uncertainty. It could take a turn and take a direct hit on Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and then maybe even Cuba. So very interesting to see where this thing is going to be going. But it looks like for the most part, it's going to stay out of the way of the United States. But it probably will. The end of it will probably pass through the Sargasso Sea. But I mean, the duration of the storm is probably going to be from now until looks like, let me see, this is Tuesday. So like now until next Tuesday is when it'll maintain tropical storm force wind gusts. But it should stay mainly over waters for its entire lifetime. But I mean, this could definitely reach a 60 mile an hour storm. I mean, we click here, and it's already by Saturday. This could possibly be by Saturday a 60 mile per hour tropical storm. So that is a pretty nice sized tropical storm. That's pretty dangerous. It's pretty close to Guadalupe, so it could make a second landfall on these Southern Antilles Islands in only a few days. So it's a very very unusual pattern to see two tropical storms really close together. But this one is going to look almost identical to Bret. So Cindy saying that, already saying that Cindy is going to be a tropical storm. Cindy looks like, she could definitely be a pretty strong one. But it's going to maintain 60 mile per hour winds through pretty much throughout all of Saturday, and then maybe the early morning hours of Sunday is when this will start getting decreased. And it'll enter this area of very, very strong wind shear, and it'll get just torn apart. But probably by Monday, 8 a.m. Monday, like the late morning hours of Monday, you'll start seeing these wind gusts die down back into tropical depression, force wind gusts, and then eventually, by Tuesday, you could definitely have wind gusts only up to 35 miles per hour. But like I said, we still don't know exactly where this could go. I mean, it could definitely go towards Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and then maybe even Cuba. But you see here, this is a cone of uncertainty. So we still don't really have a great idea of where this is going to go after it reaches, tropical storm force winds. But really, what we do know, though, is and what we expect is that this storm will start its way or its climb northwesternly flow. It'll start, moving in that direction, probably starting, around 2 p.m. today, and then once we get into like the later afternoon hours of today. But that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Not subscribe to the channel. We'll see you guys in the next video. So stay safe out there. Bret's gonna be a pretty bad one, but just make sure that you're ready for this storm to make landfall. Stay safe out there, guys, and have a great night. Have a great day.